Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I know it's early. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the ability to giving this class a day earlier. And the reason I'm doing it is for the next 2 days in Israel is Memorial Day, and it's Yom HaAtzmaut, which we call it actually Chag HaAtzmaut, the holiday of our independence. And I wanted to start with Yom HaZikaron, which is Memorial Day, which for me, it is very different than Memorial Day in the States. I remember the first time I went to the States and I was told that there's going to be a Memorial Day, and I was prepared for what we experience in Israel, and it was something more opposite. There couldn't be. So I'll just tell you how we experience it over here and what my goal is for this Memorial Day. And then we're gonna go on to our avodah, and we're gonna learn a little bit more. How are we preparing ourselves for Shavuot, which is our goal in the coming weeks, as we said last week. So in Israel on Yom HaZikaron, I got sent to me a soldier that was killed, and he's considered mine. I read up about him, and I adopted him, and I am lighting a candle for him, and I'm saying Tehillim, and I'm praying, and I sort of have a connection through reading up about him. The government sends you, if you are interested, a soldier or 2 soldiers for you to adopt, and it's like having a connection to someone that I never knew, that I never met, but who lived here, who gave his life for us to be able to live as a free nation in Israel. And that's something that I'm taking upon myself. Now, throughout the day on the radio, there are parents talking about their children, parents who lost their children. We're going to be going to graveyards where soldiers were buried. We're going to be standing still. There's going to be a siren, and the whole of the country stands still for a minute. And we're going to be saying Tehillim. And for a 24-hour, we're going to pause a little bit and think about the meaning of what it is that people gave our lives so that we could live here. Now, the goal really is not to remember. It's not to remember these soldiers that lived, but the goal is to be worthy of the sacrifice that they made. And it doesn't matter where we are and where we live, because I feel like the fact that Israel exists and is strong, and it is the home of the Jewish people, allows Jews all over the world to live in a very safe way, to live in a way that if anything, God forbid, would happen anywhere around the world to Jews, there's always Israel to come to, and there's always Israel to go and try to help and save the day. I just remembered, let's say, the Entebbe raid, where they kidnapped a plane filled with Jews. They weren't even Israelis, but they just took all the Jews out. And the only country that got up and stood up and said, we're not going to allow it to happen, is Israel. So I feel like as Jews all over the world, we need to be worthy of the sacrifice that these soldiers made, and to be able to live our lives in filled with gratitude, in awe of the way our lives are, and in doing our avodah of bringing and shining Hashem's light through us. So on Yom HaZikaron, with the listening, and also it's like almost we become blotting papers to listen to the pain and to contain it for 24 hours. These parents, brothers, sisters of soldiers who fell, they have a 24-hour period where everyone is living and feeling their pain. And I just want to give an example of 2 fathers who came up on the radio today. It was very inspiring. The announcer on the radio said that there are many parents who are complaining about the army. What are they complaining about? In the Israeli army, if you're an only son, or if you're a son if you're a brother of someone that was killed in a war or in a terror attack, you don't have to serve in a combat unit. You serve in the army, but not in a combat unit. Usually most of the soldiers killed are in combat units. So the only way you could go and be in a combat unit is if your parents sign off for you. Your parents have to say, I sign off. But many parents who only have one son, have one child, they don't want to sign. But what happens in Israel is the children, because it's a status symbol and they want to have meaningful lives. We all want to live meaningful lives. Many of the soldiers want to go into combat and they pressure their parents to sign. And they brought up two fathers who both had only sons, and the sons pressured them to sign, and both of the sons were killed in different times in different wars in Israel. So the reporter brought both of the fathers up, and the reporter was saying, the army should have a law. They do not take into combat. Like, don't go to the parents and tell the parents sign. The children shouldn't even have the option of going to the parents to tell the parents to sign. The army should just outlaw it. And they asked these two fathers, what do you think? And one father, who this was his only son, his son was killed 3 years ago. He said that if he had another son, he would 100% go and sign to allow his son to be in combat. He said, my son wanted to have a meaningful life. My son wanted to give. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of what he stood for. I'm proud of this country. I'm proud of our, the soldiers and the generals and the chief of staff. I'm just proud of everyone. And I just want to be mechazek them to be able to continue on and do the work that they're doing. And he said something really interesting. He said when he was sitting Shiv'ah, a father came to him and the father said, I also had an only son and I refused to sign for my and my son, sorry, I'm giving this class on the phone. So at times, if I get a phone call, I just put it to voicemail. So just bear with me. So this father said that when he sat Shiv'ah, another father came to him that didn't allow his son to go into combat. And he told his son, you can also do other meaningful things in the army. It doesn't necessarily have to be in combat. And sure enough, the son went to a place called the Kiryah, which they do and a to Arab radio and writing everything down, whatever. He went out of the basis. He went out of the how do you say basis? Out of the base, and he got hit by a bus, and he died. And the father told him, "I feel so sorry that I didn't allow my son to go into combat because when it's a person's time to go, he's going to go, and my son wanted it so much, and I thought I was protecting him, and it's really all in Hashem's hands." The other father, on the other hand, was saying that the army should outlaw it. They shouldn't ask the parents to sign. They should just never, ever, ever take single, like only child to go into the army. But it was a very fruitful discussion between two men who were fathers who suffered a great loss. Each one of them looked at it in a really different way. And it's these types of conversations that we hear in Israel on this day, in this 24, 25 hours until we reach Yom HaAtzmaut. So this is Yom HaZikaron coming up, and it is a day that they do not allow restaurants to be opened, stores are not opened. It's not about shopping, it's not about going out to eat, it's not about having a good time, it's a time of introspection. And maybe we can take on, to think about how we will utilize our lives so that the sacrifice that they made is a worthwhile sacrifice. they did give up their lives, and I'm going to do something meaningful with my life. Okay. Exiting that, and let's go on to my avodah. And I had a really sweet avodah this week, and I want to thank my husband for the direction that he gave me in this avodah. So one of my daughters had a conversation with me. She asked, could we talk? And I want to share with you some things that are going on in my life. And she shared with me a couple of things. And the things that she shared with me, one of them like really shocked me. And I couldn't believe that this is what, she's going through. And I was disappointed in her. And I didn't say anything. I just listened. And I shared it with my husband, and we went to bed. And of course I couldn't fall asleep. And in my mind, it was, how could she, and how is she, and why is she, and what's happening? Like, I just didn't know where to take it. At 3 a.m, I felt like, I want to wake up. I'm waking up Ralph, and I just want to process it with him. I want to talk to him about it. So I wake him up and I go, Ralph, what do you think about what our daughter told us? What do you think about it? And he told me, I don't think about it. I don't think about it. As a father, in my drawer as a father, I have a couple of things. Thinking about what they're going to do and why they're doing what they're doing and how they're choosing to live their lives is not in my drawer. I'm here to support them, to give them my wisdom if they ask, if they want it. When I mean support, it could mean I could a little bit financially support them if they're in a crunch. When I mean to support is to try to help them clarify the direction that they're going if they ask for it. I'm here to teach. And otherwise, that's all I'm here for as a father. That is all I'm here for. And the last thing I want to do is allow them to take up precious time from my life, from the way I decide to live my life. Precious real estate in my brain thinking about it. It's not what I want to be it's not what I want to put in the drawer as a father. And it was like, I feel sometimes like Ralph does the avodah naturally, because yes, I'm not supposed to be thinking about how could she and why is she, and I can't believe she is, and I can't believe she didn't, or I can't believe she did, all these things. Like, no, I'm supposed to, instead of focusing on her life and what she is or is not doing, I need to focus on how to live my life more fully, more honestly, more connected to Hashem, to live my life, to fulfill my mission in this world. I have a mission in this world. I want to fulfill it. How am I going to do it? How am I going to figure all these things out if my mind, if my brain is focused on my daughter and what direction she's taking next? In other words, so my avodah is to try to be able to focus more on my journey, on myself, on my direction, where I'm heading. And as Ralph says, I just don't think about her. I don't think about what she's doing. It's not an issue for me. Okay. Hold on. So now we're on a journey of leaving Mitzrayim, and it's a journey of tikkun, of mending, of fixing ourselves, because we don't want to go from one enslavement, like we went out of Mitzrayim, we got out of from under Paro's hands, and we don't want to jump into another enslavement. Like for Bnei Israel, they come out of Mitzrayim, and then before they even got to the Torah, they started to complain. And complaining is another form of enslavement. When we complain, we're like saying, we can't, the situation sucks, it stinks, we have no strength, what's going to happen, how's it going to be? So that's deciding to be enslaved by our complaints. So we leave Paro, and we don't want to take on another dictator. Now, how do we do that? We do that with the knowledge that Hashem is hiding in this world. He's hidden in this world. There's a beautiful pasuk. It says El mistater b'shafri chavyon. He's hiding here in this world, and our avodah in this world is to uncover him, to help him appear. Now, when we were in exile, we are in exile. There's darkness. If there's darkness in our lives, then we're in exile in our life. and God is in that darkness. Now, how do we get from exile to geula, to like redemption? Geula comes from the word legalot. Legalot is to reveal. We need to, in this darkness, see where Hashem is, to unveil him, to discover him, to uncover him. Now, how does Hashem expect us to uncover him? How are we going to discover his depths? How are we going to do that? And that's going to be done when Hashem gives us the Torah. When Hashem gives us the Torah. Now, when I say the Torah, I mean the Torah twofold. One is the Torah that we got on Sinai, and which is what we learn and we study and we read every day, every Shabbat, etc. And there's another Torah that Hashem gave us, and it's a more hidden Torah, and it's a personal Torah, and it's a Torah that he gave us through our parents, through the generations that we were born to. Now, one of the things that hides Hashem's light from us and hides his Torah from us, the personal Torah that he gave us, is when we argue with reality that is in front of us. When we resist or argue with reality, that creates a big darkness in our lives. And right in that darkness, we need to uncover him. It's asking the questions of why. Why did this happen? Why is this, why did it, like when we have a conversation between us and God, between us and our husbands, like we behave like little children. It's as if, when a child asks a mother, can I have chocolate? And the mother says no. And the child says, but why not? The truth is, he really doesn't want to know. He just wants that chocolate. It's almost like when we're told no, we feel like we're unloved. And when we are told yes, we feel that we are loved. Like if our husband would tell us, no, you can't have something that we want to have. So we feel like, oh, he doesn't love us. And when he says yes, we'll go, oh, okay, yes, he does love us. But that's like a very infantile way of looking at our relationship with God or with anyone else that we have complaints about, whether it's our spouse, whether it's our children, whether it's Hashem. We don't want to have this kind of childlike interaction or relationship with. And we need to try to discover, where is God hidden in the situation that we're in? Where is he hidden? Okay, so I want to give an example of something that happened to Michal Peretz, and how are we to uncover this Torah that Hashem gave us in order for us to be able to uncover him in our lives and in this world, in order for us to bring ourselves to a geula, like to bring the gilui, to bring the uncovering, so that we will have our redemption. So I'm telling a story that happened to Michal Peretz, and through another 2-3 stories that I'm going to say, I think it's something that's going to be more understood. So Michal has her parents who are quite old. They're like 90. Her father is a Holocaust survivor, and the mother sort of took on the job of taking care of the father. And she, not sort of, I mean, there are sometimes wives that are more dominant in the taking care of the husband, and she's dominant in taking care of the father. Now, because it was Yom HaShoah 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, Michal wanted her father to come and meet all her students and tell them the story of his survival. And he does it really, really beautifully. And I have the recordings. If anyone knows Hebrew, I could send it to you, and you can see him telling the story to like 500 of Michal's students. And he wrote a book, and the book is called Lo Amut Ki Achyeh, I will not die, I will live. Those are like Pesukim from the Hallel. And so Thursday he was slotted to come to speak to everyone. Now, Michal was trying to find someone to drive them. They live in Haifa, which is a 2-hour cab drive. And she was trying to find someone to drive them. And it came like 2 days before the father was supposed to, like, it was on Tuesday. And not one student was coming from Haifa, so no one offered to drive the father and the mother. Now, the mother is a very meticulous kind of a person, and she really wants to know what's going to happen. She wants to know that everything is in place. So Michal called up her mother and she told her, Ma, I couldn't find any student to take you. Could you please call a cab that you know, a cab driver that you know, and book him and let me know how much it is, and I'll pay for it. So the mother knew a cab driver that drives her and the father around Haifa. And she asked him, could you drive us to give the class? And he said, yes, $300. And she called up Michal and said, I booked the cab, it's $300. Michal said, fine, great. A half hour later, one of Michal's students called her up, a student that has been learning Judaism with Michal's mother. She's a student that was a top Israeli model 10 years ago, all on Vogue and in Europe, like a very, very famous model. And she went out of modeling and started to learn Judaism as well. So she called up and she said, I'd love to take your parents. It was a half hour later. So Michal said, great, let me call my mother and tell her to cancel the cab. So she called up her mother and said, Ma, could you please cancel the cab? One of my students is going to take you. And the mother said, no, I'm not going to cancel the cab. It's not nice. I already booked him, and this is the guy's parnasa. I'm not canceling the cab. Now, Michal said that usually in her head, she would have things to say about her mother. Things would be like, there's no such thing as not nice, and it would just happen a half hour ago, and you're going to be saving $300, and there's my student who wants to travel with you and wants to take you, wants to learn from you, and she would be arguing with her mother in her head. She would never argue with her mother like in person, but in her head she would. And for the first time, as Michal is trying to get to Shavuot, and she's trying to uncover the personal Torah Hashem gave to her through her parents, she said to herself a sentence that I want us to be able to say to ourselves. And the sentence is, I never know better than my mother. My mother knows best. My mother knows best. She is the authority and she knows better than me. And my mother is passing on her Torah to me. And that Torah is getting passed on. That's the personal Torah that we are getting passed on from Har Sinai. And through this Torah, we're going to discover Hashem in our lives. And this Torah that I must pass from one generation to another. And what is that Torah? What is my mother trying to tell me? It's not on the surface level. It's not like, oh, yes, parnasa, not nice, yes, nice. There's something deep my mother is trying to tell me. And she said, the message your mother is trying to tell her is, your father is driving all this way to pass on his story because he wants it to be passed on from one generation to the other. And you're calling me and asking me about matters of money, like the bland things of life, the trivial things of life. Instead of focusing on the higher things in life, you're like calling me and take this one, take that one. It's expensive. It's not expensive. And the mother is trying to tell her, don't focus on life's trivialities. Focus on the higher things in life. And a high thing in life is your father traveling to tell the story of his Holocaust years so that people are going to learn from it, so that he can inspire them. Now, when we argue or resist what's in front of us, right? When we argue and resist what's in front of us, we bring darkness into our life. That's how darkness comes into our life. When we're trying to argue, when we're trying to argue and resist what our parents specifically are trying to show us and teach us. Now, when I say argue and resist, I also mean the words like, no, this is not our way. No, I don't do that. No, it's not proper. I will never do that. This is not what I believe in. This isn't my, like, when we say these kind of sentences, these are classic resisting sentences that we that we need to realize there's a Torah underneath these sentences that we're totally missing. And at that point, really Hashem can't make himself known in our life. I want to tell another story that will illustrate also what it means to listen to the Torah that was given to us, but the personal Torah. So one of the women that I go to class with, her name is Eva. And before Pesach, she wanted to buy a gift for her mother and her mother-in-law. And she went to the mall. She's the one that her husband owns Tesla company in Israel. And she went to the mall. She was looking, and she saw something that she thought her mother might like. And she decided to call her mother at that minute and ask her, Ma, I see this one, I see the other one. Which one do you think you will like? She was saying, I was filled with goodwill and happiness, and the phone was busy. So she waited another 5 minutes, and she called back her mother, and she asked her mother, Ma, who are you talking to? And her mother told her, it's none of your business. She was so hurt. She didn't want to buy the gift. She stood there in the mall, and she felt like, I don't even want to go to her, and how could she talk to me this way? And this is what I call resistance. This is what I call focusing on the trivial. But she all of a sudden caught herself and said, what is going on over me? What's happening to me? What is my mother trying to teach me? And she said, the Torah that my mother's trying to teach me is that, first of all, I always think that I know better than my mother. I always think I know better than her. But my mother's trying to say, I believe that we always need to be friends. This is what I believe. Eva was, and the mother's trying to say, a mother is not a friend. A mother teaches Torah Chaim. A mother teaches her daughter, we're not friends. And so she swallowed and wiped her tears and took out her credit card and went to buy the gift for her mother and went to buy for her mother-in-law. And she went to her mother's house right away. And she said, for the first time, I walked into my mother's house, and I took her hand and I kissed it. And she realized that her whole life, she always thought, I'm going to do different than my mother, and I know better than my mother, and I'm going to raise my kids in a better way than my mother. But her korban Pesach is that she thought that she always knows best with everything, especially more than her mother. And she told her mother, now I want to apologize to you because I understand what you're trying to tell me is that a mother is someone that's not a friend. A mother is someone that we need to learn from. And for the first time, she said she was able to lift her eyes to her mother. So when I say, I don't want to do what my mother did, I want to be different, I don't agree, I'm not willing, it creates a darkness in us because we are like nursing off the void, off something that doesn't exist. It's as if we're negating fundamental learnings that were passed down to us from our forefathers on Har Sinai. Now, what exactly happened on Har Sinai? What happened on Har Sinai? What was so powerful that happened over there? When we came out of Egypt, we were, I think, a nation like animals, I would say, because we see this incident when Moshe is coming and he sees an Egyptian hitting a Jew, and he stops and he kills the Egyptian. And the next day he comes and he sees two Jewish people hitting one another. And at that point, Moshe felt like, in this type of atmosphere, I don't want to have anything to do with these people. And he leaves for many years. So in the years that they were enslaved and imprisoned, I don't think the situation became much better. So, and plus, Paro put like these shotrim, these police force guards who were also Jewish to make sure that we were doing the work. So it was like maybe the Gestapo that were Jews, but also needed to function under the Nazis, which is what was happening in Egypt. And I'm sure, and that creates an atmosphere of a dog eat dog kind of situation. So we're brought out of Egypt and we're all individuals, separated, not cohesive. And within 49 days, we come to Had Sinai and we turn into a nation that is able to live together. And what happened at that point? It was because at that point, we met at Had Sinai and we were all expected to lift our eyes to heaven and to get the Torah. We didn't meet each other on like a regular terrain of dog eat dog kind of a word. We met on the ground where our lives is not all we do is fight, but we rose above ourselves and we were able to meet like our upper levels of existence, which is the Torah, which is what Hashem wanted to give us. Like we all of a sudden had one, how do you say, one point that brought us together, and that was the Torah. Like that, it's like we all got a mission from Hashem to bring into the world, and that made us all cohesive together. We couldn't be dog eat dog anymore. Our existence wasn't one of a lot of individuals living together, but we were there for one goal. And I was thinking about it like when a Christian couple gets married, they face each other. They're across from one another. And when a Jewish couple marries, they stand and they face usually outwardly. Many couples in Israel like to face Jerusalem, right? And when they get married, it's as if they're saying, we're not facing one another. Our life is not going to be all about me, about you, and you about me. It's not going to be about just us being together. We are facing out because we have a common goal. And when we have that common goal, we're never lonely and we can never fight because there's something common that we're walking towards. There was a story in class today of talking about loneliness and coming to that point. Before I tell the story, I felt this very much on Shabbat. On Shabbat, I woke up late and I decided to go to the Chabad shul. And I didn't even know where it was. And my son took me there. We go and there's not a person that I know over there. No one in the women's section that I ever met. No one in the men's section that I ever met. And I sat there and I prayed. And though I knew no one, I was not alone and I was not lonely because we were all praying to one Hashem. We were all listening to the reading of the Torah. There was a common goal over there. We were all involved in doing something very similar. So what that I didn't know anyone. It wasn't lonely because we were all on the same page. We were on the same page. So there was a woman in class who was saying that before she's 4 generations in Israel of secular Jews. In other words, her great-great-great-grandparents came to Israel before the Holocaust, in the 1900s, and they totally threw away their Judaism. And she knows nothing about traditions or laws or Torah. And she had 4 children, and she wanted to do the Seder in the right way. Like she's been coming to Michal's classes, and she said, you know what, this Seder, I want it to be a traditional Seder, but she had no clue how to do it. And her husband didn't want to have a clue on how to do it. And so she asked her husband, do you mind coming with me to my friend's house? She's religious, and let's do a Seder with a religious couple. So we'll be able to learn how to do it. And he said, no, I really want to do the Seder at home. She said, you know what, she had no clue how to do anything. She said, I'll read the Haggadah from beginning to end. And no one was really interested. And she just felt very alone. She said that she felt like when she was a young girl, she was in school and she was like ostracized by her peers, right? She felt all her life that she was walking alone. And the reason that she felt so lonely is because she said she never knew how to join society and feel like everyone is on the same page. She always felt like an outsider, an outcast. And part of the standing on Har Sinai and getting the Torah is the feeling of togetherness that we have, of having a similar goal, similar, not message, but mission. And that was what I was looking for. Like that we have a similar mission. There's a similar direction that we're going to. And in her Seder and in her childhood, these two experiences were replicated. So for her, really, the avodah would be to see how she is going to join in, whether it's society, whether it's the Jewish people, to be on the same page with them. And then you could never feel lonely. We could never feel lonely in that way. Okay, I'm stopping. Okay, so I just put the recording on because we were asked a question that I think is really important that we need to address. So the question was asked, what if hold on 1 minute, I just want to, sorry, yep. I'm just putting on mute again, mute, oh, perfect, okay. The question was, what if our parents, okay, so first of all, the Torah that our parents are a generation closer to Har Sinai than we are. So they're the connection to Har Sinai that we have. So we need to try to draw from them the Torah that they got there. And the question was, what if a parent asks me to do something that's against the Torah? It asks me to do something that is against, like, let's say the learnings that we're doing over here. Okay, so something against the Torah, something against the learning that is happening here. So I want to say, and this is really the reason I'm putting the recording back on, is our parents, no one could tell us what to do, but they could all tell us the Torah. They could all tell us what is the personal family Torah. Now, let's say in a family that, I just want to, wait, I had an example that I'm trying to remember. Oh, okay, great. So I'm gonna give this example. So not to jump into any personal example, there was a woman in class that when she was 4 years old, her father died, and they were 4 or 5 children, and her mother put them all in an orphanage, right? Now, the mother couldn't handle raising them or whatever, and they were put in the orphanage. The mother is not telling her, I think children should be put in orphanages. The mother is actually trying to say, children are the most valuable things we have, and we need to take care of them. And if I can't give them the care that's the best care possible, then I'm going to let someone else give them the best care possible. And for this mother, it was putting her children in an orphanage. Now, this woman always looked down at her mother and said, you know, I'm going to be a better mother, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, et cetera, et cetera. However, the mother putting her in an orphanage was really the deeper message over here. So I don't want to go, like, a lot of times our parents are trying to tell us, let's say, I'm going to give another example from me. Things happen between my siblings, and my mother calls up and call this one and tell them this, and call that one and tell them that. And how could they? And this is a great one. Happened yesterday. My brother and his whole family went to a bris and right near my mother's house, and then they decided to come visit my mother, and everyone came and bombed down on my mother. After they left, my mother goes to me, Michal, you have to tell your brother, I can't handle everyone anymore. Tell them not to come. It's too much for me. I don't this. I have no more strength. What do you think? What do you this? What do you that? So first of all, I don't I want to understand what is my mother's Torah over here. And my mother is trying to tell me, she's not trying to tell me what to do. And of course, I'm not calling up my brother, I'm not telling him anything. But underneath what my mother's trying to say is, I need to take care of myself. I need to make sure that I have my own strength to function. Or she was trying to tell me, I know my limits, and these are my limits. Okay. Or she's trying to tell me the Torah that she's trying to tell me, you know, whenever she calls me up to tell me, tell this one this and tell that one that, she's trying to tell me, I want there to be peace between you guys. So she's calling me to try to make the peace, and she's telling me to, this one did this one and call him and tell him, and that one did that one and call him and tell her, right? No. So what my mother's saying is, peace is the most important thing in the world, and that's her Torah. No one could tell us what to do. And telling us what to do is leaving things on a very superficial level. Go here, go there, do this, do that. No, it's not, pay the guy $300. Don't pay him $300. He's going to drive me. He's not going to drive me. All these things are just not, they're superficial. I want us to go beyond the superficial and see what is it that our parents are trying to teach us, to go beyond the superficial and to say, what is it that is their Torah? What is it? So I'm going to give one more example, and hold on a minute. Oh, okay. I'm going to give one more example. Michal Peretz approached her husband and told him, I would like to create like a big, she said, every single year I invest a lot of money in the garden. This year it's Shemitah year, where I totally didn't work in the garden. I didn't do, no watering, and didn't plant anything, and I just relinquished the land, just as we're supposed to do. And I saved X amount of money. This is the amount that, now with this amount of money, I'd like to create a big playground for my grandchildren, because she has 12 children, and each one of those 12 children, most of her children have between 5 and 7 children. There's a lot of grandchildren. And I want to create a playground, like beautiful grass and slides and play, like a playground area and a swing and da-da-da. And I want to also build a wooden tree house. And here is the plan of what I'd like to do. So the husband looked at the plan and he said, I think the whole playground together was $20,000. No, sorry. Okay. The whole thing was $10,000, $5,000 for the tree house, and then $5,000 for the rest of the. So he told her, I think it's enough to just do the playground without the tree house, because like tzniut and pashtut, like simplicity and to just live modestly is a value of mine. So first of all, he's not telling her what to do, but he's giving her over his Torah. Now, Michal also has her Torah in her family. And in her Torah, in her family, is when you do something, you do it to the nth degree and the best and the nicest and the most aesthetic. And, and she said in her husband's house, things were just always very practical. No one really cared about aesthetics. They wanted to make sure that the couch is strong and the table is sturdy and the chairs, and nothing ever matched. But in her family, when they did everything, they did it to the end. So the Torah that comes from her husband's family is modesty and simplicity. We could make do with simplicity. And her Torah is everything needs to be done in the best to the highest level. Now, the first thing when we come to learn our husband's Torah, which is the teachings that we're going to be passing on to our children, we can't say in our head, we can't start arguing with him. We need to really understand where he's coming from, what he's trying to say, and realize that what he's trying to say is the words of God in our family. And this is what we need to pass on to our children. Now, in my life, I got my father's Torah, and that's for me. That's what my father gave me. But for my children, I need to pass on their father's Torah. Now, the minute she is able to hear this Torah and articulate it and accept it, and not push it away, and not argue with it, and not be resistant to it, at that point, we allow Hashem to come into our lives and do what he will do. At that point, things are going to be in Hashem's hands. And let's see what's going to be with the treehouse. Is the treehouse going to happen? Is that going to happen? It doesn't matter. This is an opportunity for us to see Hashem. It's an opportunity for us to learn that Torah. It's an opportunity for us to discover Hashem in our lives. Because through our father's Torah, through our husband's Torah, we are able to go back to Ma'amad Har Sinai and realize and accept and internalize the personal Torah that we got from the personal Torah that Hashem gave our family. Okay. Okay, I want to bring another story of what it means to, hold on, let me just get the mute on. Oh, sorry. Mute there. Mute all. Okay, mute all. I want to bring another example of what does the Torah. By the way, I also want to say another thing. There are many women who are divorced in Michal Peritz's class. Some of them remarried their old husbands, but the divorced women are supposed to be passing on their ex-husband's Torah to their children in a very pure, compassionate way. And that in turn is going to give their children a lot of confidence and strength to know that there's sustenance to be gotten from their father, and the same way they will treat their father, it would be like that would be the way that they respond to God in their life. So it needs to, like, very much, if there's, it doesn't matter if you're divorced or not, if you're on speaking terms or not. When you're divorced, you shouldn't be speaking to your husband anyway, to your ex anyway, but his Torah still needs to get passed down to his children in like a pure way. I want to just give another example of what it means to take on that Torah. And my friend Orit, she had a long day, and she went to and we went to class together, and she went to buy falafel after the class. And the guy asked her, there are 4 kinds of falafel. Which one do you want? And all of a sudden, she had a flash of how she used to be triggered whenever whenever her father needed to buy anything, right? He needed to buy like a washing machine. So he'd research, and then they'd go to the store, and the father would ask the seller, what do you recommend? And it would drive her crazy. Like, why is her father asking him what he recommends? He wants to sell the most expensive, the most this, the most that. Like, do your research and then go buy what you researched about. Why don't you trust yourself? And this is what she thought about her father for years and years. And when the falafel guy asked her, what kind of falafel balls do you want? The garlic, the parsley, the cilantro, or there was another kind. So she all of a sudden said, what was my father's Torah? What was he trying to say whenever he asked an expert, what do you recommend, right? And she realized that her father's Torah was, for every issue that you have, go and listen to the expert. Go and listen to the expert. Like, you don't have to feel like you're the biggest know-it-all. You could listen to experts. You could hear their opinion, and you could trust other people to guide you in the right way in this world. So whenever we're triggered, whenever we feel like we're resisting what we were taught, what we learned, whether it's from our husbands, from our parents, as we come closer to getting the Torah, we can delve inside the personal Torah of our families and try to see where what is the root of it? And I don't want us to say, it's not a matter of, they said to do this and they said to do that. It's not what they said to do. Someone brought up a situation that her mother was very fearful and never allowed her to sleep anywhere and lived in a constrictive kind of anxiety of where the children and what's going to happen to them, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not asked to live in the way our parents, but we're asked to, like this woman is asked to be able to reveal her mother's Torah, which is children are very valuable and they need to be protected, right? And it doesn't mean that it has to come into being expressed through anxiety or through constricting the children or through not allowing them to sleep. All these things, no, but there's an underlying message that we want to take, and that is going to connect us to Ma'amad Har Sinai and to the personal Torah that we were given there. Thank you all for joining me at such an early stage.